I never thought raising my daughter with so much love would be the reason she nearly locked me away in a nursing home. I always knew my daughter Melissa was ambitious. Even as a child, she couldn't stand being second. If she wasn't first in line, she cried. If someone else got a better grade, she'd complain of a stomachache. But I, like so many mothers, confused ambition with drive. I thought it was a good thing. My daughter's going to go far, I used to say. And she did, oh, she did. I just never imagined that on her road to success, I'd become nothing but dead weight. It was a chilly March morning, the kind where the cold seeps into your bones. I was in the kitchen, making my usual ginger tea with honey. That's when I heard her voice from the living room. She was on the phone with her husband, unaware I was already downstairs. Her voice was low, but I caught every word. She's becoming a liability. A nursing home would be the most responsible option now. I nearly dropped the teacup. I had to lean against the wall to steady myself. A liability? Me? The same woman who'd washed her diapers, sold my engagement ring to pay for her college, mortgaged my house to help her start her first business? That nursing home, she mentioned so casually, that was just a polite way of saying get rid of her. I said nothing, just walked quietly back to the kitchen like I hadn't heard a thing. A few hours later, Melissa sat across from me at the breakfast table. She smiled like nothing had happened. She served me a slice of toast with butter and, while stirring her coffee, she said, "Mom, don't you think it would be nice to live somewhere peaceful? Where they cook for you, clean, and you're surrounded by people your age. It'd be more relaxing, for all of us." I looked right at her. She was wearing that beige sweater I gave her last Christmas. She wore it to soften me up, thinking I'd still fall for her tricks. "You're trying to put me away, aren't you?" I asked, calm but direct. She paused, just for a second. "Mom, that's not fair. I'm trying to take care of you." No, what she wanted was to get me out of the way. Out of her house, out of her plans, and right into a place where I'd be forgotten. But I didn't let her see that I knew. I smiled instead, took her hand gently, and in the sweetest voice I could manage, I said, "You're right, sweetheart. Maybe I do need more help than I thought." She exhaled, relieved. Poor thing. She had no idea the storm she'd just awakened. A quiet storm. A legal one. Because if she wanted to play games, well, I had a few moves of my own. That night, she came with brochures and fake sweetness. But I had already seen her cards. She sat across from me at the dining table like we were old friends planning a vacation. Her tone was syrupy, her voice soft, but her eyes were too focused. Calculating. I'd seen that look before, just never aimed at me. "Mom," she began, placing a glossy brochure in front of me, "this place is called Willow Acres. Isn't it beautiful? They have group yoga, book clubs, even craft nights." I picked up the brochure with steady hands, but I didn't really look at it. My eyes were on her. "Craft nights?" I said. "You think I'm going to knit potholders while you sell my house?" She blinked, caught off guard. "No one's selling anything," she said too quickly. "I just think it's time you had more support. You're alone here most of the day. You deserve to be cared for." "Cared for," I repeated. "You mean tucked away?" She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Mom." I pushed the brochure back toward her. "Are you trying to put me away?" She sighed, as if I were the difficult one. "I'm trying to take care of you." There it was again. That phrase. That lie. I sat back and folded my arms. I wanted to shout, but I didn't. That's not how you win wars like this. You don't charge in yelling. You let them think you're weak. Let them think they've won. "Well," I said slowly, "maybe you're right." Her eyes lit up. "Really? Maybe I do need more help," I continued. "Maybe it would be nice to have my meals cooked and not worry about cleaning the gutters or fixing the heater." She relaxed into her chair, visibly relieved. "I'm so glad you're open to this, Mom. I just want what's best for you." I gave her a long look. "Of course you do." She didn't notice the tone. She never does. She thinks I'm slow now. She thinks gray hair means no sense of strategy. But I've played bigger games than this. That night, after she left, I didn't cry. I didn't rant. I didn't even pour myself a glass of wine. I just sat quietly at my desk, opened my old ledger, and pulled out a piece of paper I hadn't looked at in years, my will. I stared at her name on it. Melissa Elaine Harper. Full beneficiary. House, savings, car, stocks. Everything. It was time to start rewriting history. I slid the paper back in its envelope and opened my laptop. There was a number I hadn't dialed in over a decade, but I remembered it by heart. Mr. Abernathy, my lawyer. Tomorrow, I would see him. And I would start erasing her. Piece by piece. Melissa had always been the responsible one, but I now saw that responsibility had a price tag. After her father died, it was Melissa who stepped in. She paid the bills, handled the taxes, even helped me fix the garage roof that winter it caved in. And I was grateful, of course I was. What mother wouldn't be? At first, I thought it was stress. The way she hovered, the way she'd remind me to take my pills, then double-check the pill organizer. The way she'd sigh when I misplaced my keys or forgot a lunch date. She started calling me every morning and every night. Just checking in, she'd say, like a nurse doing rounds. She'd adjust my thermostat, rearrange my kitchen shelves, decide what I should wear to doctor's appointments. It all came under the banner of helping. I let it slide. I told myself she cared. That she just wanted me to be safe. That she didn't mean anything by it. But care doesn't come with control. Not real care. What I didn't realize, what I refused to see, was that she had stopped treating me like her mother a long time ago. Somewhere along the way, I'd become her project. And projects get managed. She tracked every expense from my accounts, even though I never asked her to. I'm just making sure you don't get overcharged, she'd say. But I started noticing little changes. Small withdrawals I didn't make. A payment to a landscaping service I didn't hire. Things that felt off. I confronted her once, gently. Melissa, I said, I think someone's been moving money around in my checking account. She didn't even flinch. I've just been organizing a few things. You had some old subscriptions that were draining money every month. Old subscriptions. I've lived 74 years and I've never subscribed to anything but the morning paper. I should have said more. Should have demanded an explanation. But I stayed quiet. Because deep down, I still wanted to believe she had good intentions. Mothers do that. We give the benefit of the doubt, again and again. Until one day, doubt is all we have left. After I made the call to Mr. Abernathy, I couldn't sleep that night. Not because I was nervous. But because my mind kept turning over every little moment I'd ignored. Every time she said, "Let me handle it, Mom." Every time I heard her whisper on the phone in the other room. Every time she offered to pick up groceries and came back with nothing but receipts. I had to accept something hard. This wasn't just about getting older. It wasn't about needing help. It was about power. And Melissa had gotten a taste of it. But here's the thing about me, I've lived too long, lost too much, and buried too many dreams to let my own daughter reduce me to a line item on a spreadsheet. She thought I was weak. She thought I was ready to hand over the reins. But I was just getting started. I decided to give Melissa exactly what she wanted, on the surface. The next morning, I called her before she could call me. I made my voice soft, just a hint of hesitation. "Sweetheart," I said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about the home." She was silent for half a second. Then came that eager, sugary tone. "Really, Mom? I'm so glad. I knew you'd come around." I let her talk. Let her go on about amenities, and peace of mind, and how much better I'd feel. Like I was a worn-out piece of furniture she finally convinced someone to haul away. "I don't want to be a burden," I said quietly. She made a sympathetic noise. "You're not, Mom. I just think this will be good for everyone." Everyone. Funny how often people say, everyone, when they really mean, me. I agreed to a tour of a place she called Sunset Haven. The name alone made my stomach turn. But I smiled through the phone and told her I was open to it. That I trusted her. That was the moment she let her guard down. And the moment I began my quiet exit. That afternoon, I pulled out the old lockbox from my bedroom closet. Inside was a bundle of papers, receipts, letters, a few photos, and the name of the man who had handled my affairs for 32 years, Mr. Albert Abernathy. I hadn't seen him since my husband passed, but I knew he'd still be sharp. The kind of man who read everything twice and kept records longer than the IRS. I made an appointment and went in the next day. He hadn't changed much. A little grayer, a little slower, but those eyes were still hawk-like. "Mrs. Campbell," he said, shaking my hand. "It's been too long." I sat down across from him, opened my purse, and pulled out my will. "I need to make some changes," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Big ones?" I slid the document across the desk. Remove Melissa completely. Every penny. Every piece of property. He leaned back, clearly surprised. Who's the new heir, if I may ask? I smiled faintly and pointed to the window. Across the street, the mailman was chatting with a neighbor's dog, scratching its ears like they were old pals. Him. Mr. Abernathy blinked. The mailman? He's been more present in my life than my daughter. He brings my medicine when I forget. He checks if I've slipped on the stairs. Last week, he changed a light bulb without me asking. That's worth something. He didn't question me, just nodded and got to work. I walked out of that office feeling 20 years lighter. Melissa thought I'd surrendered, that I was going to let her pack me away and collect her inheritance in peace. But I had just made the first real move. And the best part? She had no idea. A few small steps can make a big storm, especially when no one sees them coming. By the end of that week, I'd begun quietly cleaning house. Not scrubbing floors. No, this was a different kind of cleaning. I started going up to the attic in the afternoons, rummaging through old boxes like I was just reminiscing. But every time I came down, something was missing. A silver tea set I hadn't used in years. Gone. The crystal vase Melissa had always said would be hers, someday. Sold. A couple of paintings my husband adored but she never noticed. Wrapped up, listed online, and picked up by a collector who paid in cash. One by one, I let go of the items she would have fought over. Things she probably already imagined in her future dining room or office. I wasn't going to let her have the satisfaction. The money? It went into a separate savings account. One she didn't know existed. I didn't tell anyone, not even Fran. Fran's my neighbor and oldest friend, bless her soul. She always stops by with a slice of banana bread or some new gossip about the neighborhood. She was the only one I trusted enough to say anything, eventually. But first, I needed to test something. One afternoon, I casually mentioned to Melissa that I was sorting through old things. She perked up immediately. You know, Mom, if you're downsizing, I could help list a few things online. We'd get a good price. That word again, always planting herself right in the middle of anything she thought she could benefit from. I smiled and said, "Oh, don't worry, sweetheart. I already found someone. He's helping me with everything." Her smile faltered. Who? I shrugged. Just someone I met through church. She didn't like that. I could see it behind her eyes. Suspicion. That creeping worry that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as she thought. That maybe she wasn't in control after all. But she played it cool. Said she was happy for me. Even brought over dinner that night, all fake concern and overly cheerful chatter. I watched her rinse the dishes like she was still playing house. Like she thought I was too old or too tired to know what she was really doing. I let her believe it. I even complimented the stew. Because the more comfortable she was, the more careless she became. The very next morning, I woke up early, made my tea, and went to double-check the back bedroom. Sure enough, the jewelry box was open. And it hadn't been me. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I just picked up the box, emptied the few remaining pieces into a velvet pouch, and locked it in the safe behind the closet. The one Melissa doesn't know exists. It wasn't about the jewelry anymore. It was about the message. She thought I was too slow to see her moves. But I'd been watching her play this game for a while. And I was done being quiet. Sometimes you need to say it out loud just once, to remind yourself you're not crazy. It was a cloudy Tuesday when I finally told Fran everything. We were sitting on her porch, each with a cup of tea in hand. She'd just finished telling me about her grandson's new girlfriend, a yoga instructor with 3 nose rings, and then she turned to me and said, "You look tired, Doris. What's going on?" So I told her. About the phone call I overheard. About the nursing home brochure. About the will. And about the mailman. Fran nearly dropped her cup. "You left everything to Kevin?" she whispered, clutching her chest like I'd just confessed to a murder. "The mailman?" I nodded. She blinked. "Have you lost your mind?" "No," I said calmly, "I've found it." I told her how Kevin brings my medicine when I forget. How he shovels my walkway after snowstorms without being asked. How he noticed when I didn't pick up my mail for 2 days and knocked on the door just to make sure I was still breathing. He cares, Fran. And he asks for nothing in return. She looked at me for a long moment, then sat back in her chair. "Well," she said finally, "I guess I can't argue with that." I took a slow sip of tea. Melissa stopped seeing me as her mother the moment I became her retirement plan. Fran made a noise in the back of her throat. That girl's always been sharp. But this is cold. I nodded. She thinks she's already won. That I'll go quietly and leave her the spoils. Fran narrowed her eyes. And you're just letting her think that? I smiled. Of course. There was a long silence. Then Fran grinned. You're scarier than you look, Doris. I've had time to think, I said. And I'm done being quiet. I told Fran about how I'd started selling the valuables from the attic. How I opened a new bank account. How I'd already set the next meeting with Mr. Abernathy. And how I'd been keeping records, carefully. Every odd withdrawal. Every small lie. Every attempt to nudge me toward giving up control. Fran didn't say much after that. She just nodded, occasionally muttering, good, or smart, or about time. When I left her porch, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Validated, like I wasn't losing my mind. Like I wasn't being dramatic or unreasonable. Sometimes all it takes is one person to say, I see it too. That night, Melissa called to confirm the tour at Sunset Haven. I think you'll really like it, Mom, she chirped. I smiled into the phone. I'm sure I will, sweetheart. Can't wait. Let her plan. Let her schedule. Let her dream of an empty house and a fat inheritance. She had no idea I'd already begun rewriting the ending. And this time, it wouldn't include her. While she planned my retirement, I planned my quiet escape. Melissa scheduled the tour for a Friday morning. Sunset Haven. She spoke about it like it was some kind of luxury spa. They have a koi pond, Mom, she said, like fish were going to make up for being abandoned. I nodded sweetly. Sounds peaceful. She looked so pleased with herself. Like a good daughter. Like she was doing the noble thing. Meanwhile, I was clearing out the attic with the efficiency of a thief. Every day, I made sure something else disappeared, carefully, discreetly. I sold what I could, donated what I couldn't. Not because I needed the money. Because I didn't want Melissa to get her hands on any of it. The old silver cutlery set? Gone. The heirloom quilts from my grandmother? Given to a local historical society. My wedding china? Sold to a lovely couple just starting out. Piece by piece, I dismantled the life she assumed she'd inherit. I even gave away the rocking chair from the front porch, the one she always said she'd keep, for the baby room. Whose baby? I didn't know. She's never had time for kids, too busy networking and meal prepping like her life is an Instagram ad. On Thursday night, the day before our big tour, I sat down with a cup of peppermint tea and made a list. Not of what I'd be taking to the home, but of what Melissa didn't know. Mr. Abernathy had updated the will. Kevin, the mailman, was now the sole heir. I had moved 80% of my assets to a private trust. The key to my safe had been relocated, far, far away. And most importantly, I had no intention of moving into Sunset Haven. But I played my part. The next morning, she picked me up right on time, all smiles. Her car was clean, the seats wiped down with lemon-scented something. She even brought me a thermos of coffee and a cinnamon scone. Trying too hard. I think you'll love it, she chirped. I smiled. I'm sure I will. We drove in silence most of the way. I pretended to stare out the window like I was nervous, small, helpless. She probably thought I was finally surrendering. We pulled into the circular drive of Sunset Haven, all bright flowers and faux cheer. A receptionist in pastel pink waved us in with the same smile I'd seen in too many waiting rooms. We toured. She talked. I nodded. At the end, as we stepped outside into the sun, Melissa touched my arm gently. Mom, she said softly, don't you feel safer knowing you'll be cared for? I looked at her, and for just a moment, I let her see it, the steel behind my eyes. I feel a lot of things, I said. But mostly, I feel ready. Ready for what? She asked. I didn't answer, because she didn't deserve to know. Not yet. The final straw wasn't loud. It was quiet, brazen, and done in my own bedroom. 2 days after the Sunset Haven tour, I caught her. It was early. I hadn't made my tea yet, just walked quietly down the hall in my slippers. The house was still, no birds outside, no cars on the road. One of those rare, still mornings where you feel like the world is holding its breath. That's when I heard it. The faint jingle of metal. A drawer sliding. I froze just outside my bedroom door. It was open. Melissa was inside. Her back was to me, bent over my jewelry box. My old velvet-lined box with the tiny silver clasp that always stuck. She didn't hear me. She was holding the gold locket my mother gave me when I turned 18. She didn't even flinch when I stepped into the room. "Oh," she said, startled, but not sorry. "I was just organizing." "Organizing," I repeated flatly. She straightened up and placed the locket back too quickly, too carelessly. "I noticed you haven't worn some of these in a while. Thought maybe you'd want to sort through them. You know, donate or redistribute." Redistribute. The audacity. I walked over slowly, took the box from the dresser, and held it in both hands. "You think I don't notice when something goes missing?" I asked quietly. Her smile faltered. "Mom, don't be paranoid." "I'm not." I closed the jewelry box with a loud click and held her gaze. "Get out." She blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Out of my room. Now." Her mouth opened to argue, but something in my face must have stopped her. Maybe she saw the line she'd crossed. Or maybe she finally realized I wasn't as soft as she hoped. She left without another word. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding that box like it was a beating heart. Inside was more than just jewelry, it was history. My grandmother's brooch, my mother's locket, my husband's cufflinks, little pieces of memory she thought were just shiny things to divide and conquer. I locked the box in my closet safe. Then I walked down the hall and changed every password to every account I owned. Melissa had tried to ease me out of my own life gently. Now she wasn't even pretending. But I wasn't angry, not in the way she expected. My fury had cooled. It had settled into something far more dangerous. Clarity. I knew now there was no rescuing the girl I raised. That sweet little girl who used to kiss my cheek and draw me pictures saying, "Mommy, you're my hero." She was gone, replaced by a woman who saw me as a means to an end. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to finish what I started. And when it was done, she wouldn't even know what she'd lost, until it was too late. Sometimes silence is the loudest goodbye you'll ever give. The night before, the big move, Melissa came over with a bottle of sparkling cider and a smile so fake it might as well have been plastic. She sat across from me in the living room, legs crossed like she was hosting a talk show. "I think this is really going to be good for you, Mom," she said, pouring the cider into 2 glasses. "A fresh start. A calm place to enjoy your golden years." I sipped mine without speaking. It was warm and flat. She looked around the room like she was already measuring curtains and deciding where to put a new TV. "Less stress, you know? You won't have to worry about meals, bills, fixing things, everything will be taken care of." I nodded. "Yes, everything will be taken care of." She smiled wide, clearly relieved. She thought she'd done it. That she'd nudged me just far enough into surrender. That was her mistake. Because surrender, real surrender, doesn't smile back. I set my glass down and reached into the little drawer by my chair. Took out a plain white envelope and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "Just something I thought you should know," I said. "I made some changes to my will yesterday." She barely glanced up from her phone. "Good for you, Mom." "About time." I watched her tap through messages, completely unfazed. She didn't even open the envelope. She just tucked it into her bag like it was a takeout menu. I almost laughed. She thought it was her victory. That she'd worn me down. That I'd finally fallen into line like a good old woman, ready to hand over her keys and go quietly. She didn't realize I'd already taken her name off everything that mattered. She didn't know about the trust. Or the new beneficiary. Or the letter sitting in Mr. Abernathy's office, waiting to be mailed in 3 days. That letter would go out after she dropped me off at Sunset Haven. Just enough time for her to think she'd won. Just enough time for me to disappear from her life, and take everything with me. When she finally stood up to leave, she gave me a hug. Too long, too rehearsed. "This is for the best," she whispered. I didn't hug her back. I just patted her shoulder like I would a stranger who meant well. She left smiling, and I sat there in the dim living room, listening to the echo of the door clicking shut. No tears came, no shaking hands, just a calm, hollow space where a daughter used to be. I poured the rest of the cider down the sink and washed the glass. She thought she'd closed the book on me, but all she'd done was hand me the pen. And now, I was writing the ending. My way. The truth hit her like a freight train, and I didn't even flinch. A week after our little cider toast, it happened. Melissa showed up at my house, unannounced and unraveling. Her perfect hair was frizzy, her lipstick smudged, and she was gripping her phone like it had personally betrayed her. She didn't even say hello. She just stormed in, waving a letter in the air. You disinherited me? I was folding laundry in the living room. Nothing fancy, just towels and some cotton shirts. I didn't even look up. Oh, I said, casually. You got the letter, then. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time in a long time, she looked truly speechless. I'm your daughter, she hissed. I set a towel down and looked at her, calm as a lake in winter. And, she repeated, her voice rising. You cut me out of everything. I didn't cut you out, I said. You walked out. The day you decided to ship me off like a broken appliance. It's not like that, isn't it? She started pacing, muttering under her breath. This has to be a mistake. Mr. Abernathy must have misunderstood. He's old. Maybe he filed it wrong. No mistake, I said. Every dotted I and crossed T was mine. You're out. She stopped pacing. Her eyes were glassy now. Not with tears, but with panic. You can't do this, she said quietly. Oh, I can. And I did. She looked around the house, like seeing it for the first time. Her eyes landed on the armchair, the old piano, the family photo still on the mantel. I've done so much for you, she whispered. I stood then, slowly, deliberately, folding my hands in front of me. You did a lot for my money. Not for me. That stung. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I was just trying to help, she snapped. No, you were trying to secure your future. And you saw me as a hurdle, not a human being. She shook her head. This isn't fair. I laughed, bitter and low. You're right. It's not fair. But it's legal. And that's what matters now. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. For a moment, we just stood there. The mother she'd tried to erase, and the daughter who thought inheritance came before love. I picked up my towel, folded it neatly, and added it to the stack. You should go, I said softly. Her eyes widened. You're kicking me out? I'm asking you to leave. There's a difference. And you'll need to start learning it. She stood there another moment, frozen, stunned, furious. Then she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I didn't watch her go. Didn't peek out the window. Didn't breathe a word to anyone. I just kept folding laundry like nothing had happened. Because, in a way, nothing had. It was just the echo of a goodbye I'd already said. And the door clicking shut sounded a lot like freedom. She thought guilt would save her, but I wasn't that woman anymore. The next day, she came back. Same panic in her eyes, but this time she brought something new, tears. Not real ones, of course. I know the difference. These were the kind you squeeze out when you're cornered, when begging becomes your only weapon. She stood on my porch, clutching a box of old family photos like a peace offering. Can we talk? She asked, voice shaking. I stepped aside, saying nothing. She sat down at the kitchen table like it was still hers. Like she still belonged in this house. I've been under a lot of pressure, she began. The bills, the business, taking care of everything. I didn't mean to hurt you. I sat across from her, folding my hands. You didn't hurt me, Melissa, I said quietly. You tried to erase me. She looked up, startled. That's not true, isn't it? I asked. When you called me a liability? When you scheduled my move without asking? When you went through my jewelry box? Her lips parted, but she didn't deny it. Couldn't. I thought I was helping, she said. No, you thought I'd give in. That I'd hand over the keys and say thank you. She sniffed, eyes red now. Real emotion was finally catching up. I'm sorry, she whispered. Are you? I asked. Or are you just scared now that the money's gone? Silence. That was the real answer. I gave you everything, Melissa, I continued. Time, energy, love. Even when your father died, I never once leaned on you for anything. She lowered her head. And yet, I said, voice hardening, you looked at me and saw something disposable. Tears finally rolled down her cheeks. Not loud sobs. Just silent drips of regret, or maybe fear. It didn't matter anymore. I'm your mother, I said. And you treated me like expired food. She reached across the table suddenly, trying to take my hand. Mom, please, I pulled away. Don't. That small movement said everything. She cried, and I didn't. Because something in me had shifted. The part that used to ache for her affection, the part that begged for scraps of love, was gone. Dead, buried, and finally at peace. I loved you more than anything, I said softly. But you don't get to love someone only when they're useful. She wiped her eyes. What do I do now? I stood up and walked to the window, watching the mailman wave to the Johnson kids next door. You figure it out, I said. Like I always had to. She didn't argue. She didn't slam the door this time. She just left. And when the silence settled, it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. She tried guilt. Then she tried threats. And when that didn't work, she tried fear. After our last conversation, she went quiet for 3 days. Then, like clockwork, she showed up again, only this time with papers in hand. A stack of them, neatly stapled, labeled, and carried in one of those cheap briefcases you buy when you want to look professional but don't have the weight to back it up. She didn't even knock, just walked right in like she still had that right. I talked to a lawyer, she said. I didn't look up from my crossword. Good for you. Her mouth tightened. If you're not of sound mind, Mom, your will can be challenged. There it was. The shift from pleading daughter to calculating opportunist. You're saying I've lost my mind? I asked, keeping my voice calm. I'm saying, you've been acting strangely. Forgetful. Irrational. And if this goes to court, they'll see that. I folded my newspaper slowly. Placed it on the table. Then stood. You want to talk about irrational? I asked. You tried to move me into a facility without my consent. You rifled through my things. You tampered with my accounts. And now you want to question my judgment? I'm just trying to protect you. No, I snapped. You're trying to protect your access. To my house. To my money. To the life you planned to have at my expense. She opened her mouth, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked over to my desk and pulled out a piece of paper, one she didn't expect. It was a number written in bold black ink. Here, I said, the direct line to Sunset Haven. If you're so fond of the place, maybe you should consider a room. Her face paled. You don't mean that. I do. Because unlike you, I would never lie to someone I claim to love just to secure my own future. She stood there, stunned, gripping her legal threats like a child holding a broken toy. And I'd never felt more in control. Melissa, I said, voice steady, this is your last warning. If you push this further, you'll get nothing. Not even my name in your phone. She blinked fast, a mix of shame and fury behind her eyes. Then she turned and walked out. I didn't slam the door behind her. I didn't lock it, either. I simply walked to my closet, opened the safe, and slipped the letter from Mr. Abernathy into the top drawer, right next to my will, my deed, and a photo of my husband. Then I closed it gently. And for the first time in years, I exhaled. Not from sadness, but from peace. Her biggest mistake wasn't what she did to me, it was what she told the others. Turns out, Melissa couldn't stand the silence. So she filled it. She started calling my cousins, my old friends, even the ladies from church. Whispered just enough concern to plant doubt. Said I'd been confused lately. That I was withdrawing from family. That I wasn't taking care of myself anymore. I became the story she needed me to be, fragile. Fading. Out of touch. She even told my niece that I'd probably be better off with supervision. The word she was too cowardly to say was senile. But here's the thing about lies, they require maintenance. And Melissa? She was never that good at keeping things tidy. One Sunday morning, cousin Brenda dropped by unexpectedly. I was in the middle of hosting a small brunch, just me, Fran, and a couple of our neighbors. We had quiche, fruit salad, and fresh squeezed juice. The table was set. The coffee was hot. The music was classical. Brenda walked in expecting to find a disoriented old woman in slippers. What she found was me, in pearls and lipstick, slicing strawberries like I was running a bed and breakfast. She blinked. You seem fine. I laughed. Define fine. She stayed for an hour and left with a full stomach and a fresh perspective. And within days, word started spreading. Melissa's version of me didn't match the reality. And the thing about gossip? It doesn't always work in your favor. A week later, the pastor's wife stopped me after service and said, I heard you're going away. That true? I smiled. Not unless heaven sends me an invitation. She laughed so loud the choir turned. Every lie Melissa had fed them began to rot in the open air. One by one, people began reaching out, not with pity but curiosity. And I welcomed it. I hosted a ladies' tea. I joined a book club. I even agreed to give a talk at the library about aging with independence. Melissa didn't know what to do with that. She came by again, this time with a softer tone. Mom, she said, people are talking. I know, I said. Isn't it nice? She frowned. You're making me look bad. No, sweetheart, I said, you did that all by yourself. I watched her face fall, the realization finally sinking in. I wasn't going quietly. I wasn't playing the role she'd assigned me. And the worst part? I looked good doing it. Because the more visible I became, the less believable her story was. You can't hide your agenda when the person you tried to erase is standing in the spotlight, smiling and serving quiche. She backed off after that. Not completely, but enough. Because now she had something to lose. Reputation, credibility, and I had something back. My dignity. The same woman who once called me a burden was now on my doorstep, asking for grace. She came back again. This time, she wasn't angry. She was tired. No makeup, no performance. Just Melissa, older than I remembered her looking, standing in the same spot she used to wait for the school bus in. She didn't knock, just stood there, hands in her coat pockets, as if she didn't know whether to come in or run away. I opened the door and waited. Can I sit? She asked. I nodded. She followed me to the kitchen table, the same one we'd sat at for birthdays, arguments, and long mornings after funerals. She looked around, eyes landing on a photograph of me and her father from our trip to the Grand Canyon. We were laughing in it. Wind in our hair. A rare moment of pure joy. I messed up, she said. I waited. I was scared, she continued. I didn't know how to handle things. You were always the strong one. And when you started slowing down, I just panicked. That's not what you said to your husband, I replied calmly. You said I was a liability. Her face twisted, as if the words tasted like acid now. I didn't mean it, she whispered. But you did, I said. And then you acted on it. She looked at her hands, ashamed. I don't want to lose you, she said finally. You already did, I answered. She blinked, stung by the finality. I'm trying to make things right. I looked at her, really looked. I saw the little girl who used to curl up next to me during thunderstorms. But I also saw the woman who stood in my bedroom, clutching my locket like it was hers to take. You planned to erase me, I said. And now I'm just finishing what you started. She nodded slowly. I deserve that. I don't want revenge, Melissa. I just want peace. She reached across the table, one last attempt to touch my hand. And I stepped back, not out of anger, but because the distance had already been made, and I wasn't the one who created it. I will always be your mother, I said. But I won't be your victim. She nodded again. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time she didn't try to make a scene. Didn't beg or plead. She stood quietly, tucked her hair behind her ear, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. I'm sorry, she said again. I didn't reply, not because I didn't hear her, but because sometimes silence is the only answer someone truly listens to. She left without looking back. And for once, I didn't follow her with my eyes. I just stared at the kitchen table, the last battlefield. And I felt free. The moment I finally said everything she needed to hear, and I needed to say. A week passed. I didn't hear from her. No calls, no visits, no surprise drop-ins pretending to check the thermostat. Then, just when I thought it was over, she came back, this time with nothing in her hands. No folders, no guilt, no rehearsed speeches. She just sat across from me at the table and waited. I poured 2 cups of tea. Jasmine, her favorite. Not because I was ready to forgive her, but because I wanted her to remember who I was. Who I still was. She took a sip, then looked up at me like a child waiting to be scolded. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. I was your mother, I said. And you treated me like expired food. Something to toss when it started to smell inconvenient. She looked down, ashamed. Good. I wasn't always perfect, I continued. But I gave you everything I had. My time, my patience, my sacrifices. And when I needed kindness, you handed me a brochure. Her lip trembled. That mailman you scoffed at? I said. He brought me soup when I had a cold. He remembered my birthday. He asks how I'm feeling, not what I'm leaving behind. She nodded slowly, blinking away tears. You remembered my will, I said. Not my favorite flower. Not the way I take my tea. Not even the last book I read. Silence. You forgot me, I whispered. Long before I decided to forget you. Tears slid down her cheeks, and for once, she didn't try to wipe them away. Mom, she whispered, voice cracking, I lost myself. I thought I was doing the right thing. I sighed. That's the dangerous part, Melissa. People always think they're doing the right thing, when they're doing it for themselves. We sat there, letting the tea cool between us. I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I wasn't even looking for healing. I was looking for honesty. And in that moment, maybe, just maybe, I saw a flicker of it in her face. I don't hate you, I said quietly. But I don't trust you. She nodded. I understand. I don't know if we'll ever get back what we lost, I added. But if there's any hope at all, it starts with truth. We didn't hug. We didn't hold hands. We just sat there, a mother and daughter, on opposite sides of the same table, but finally, no longer pretending. She finished her tea, set the cup down gently, and stood. Before she left, she paused at the doorway. Thank you for the tea, she said. It wasn't much, but it was honest. And for now, that was enough. After the storm, life didn't go back to normal, it settled into something better. Melissa moved back to the city. She said she needed a fresh start, but we both knew it was about distance, emotional and physical. And maybe that was for the best. We still speak, from time to time. Birthday calls, holiday cards, a strained sort of civility, like neighbors who used to be family. But I no longer expect anything from her. And that's what finally gave me peace. As for me, I didn't go to Sunset Haven. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed right here, in the house where I raised her. The house her father built with his bare hands. The house she tried to clear out like a storage unit. And I've never been more at home. Kevin, the mailman, still stops by every Tuesday. He always brings 2 coffees, even though I tell him not to spend his money. Just doing my rounds, he says, smiling. We sit on the porch and talk. About nothing. About everything. He tells me about his daughter, Lila. She's 12, loves science and hates math. Wants to be a veterinarian. The girl's never met me, but she drew me a picture once, me holding a cat and smiling. It's framed in my hallway now, right next to Melissa's 3rd grade finger painting. Funny, isn't it? How kindness echoes louder than blood sometimes. I set up a trust for Lila. College fund, modest but solid. Kevin doesn't know yet. He wouldn't accept it if I offered it directly. But one day, when the time is right, she'll open a letter and see that someone believed in her. Just because. I also made a donation in Melissa's name, to a senior legal aid center. Quietly, without telling her. Maybe that's my version of grace. Or maybe it's just the last thread of hope that she'll someday understand the weight of what she did. Fran still comes over with banana bread. We laugh more now. There's a lightness between us that wasn't there before. She says I'm glowing. Maybe I am. It's amazing what dignity can do when you stop giving it away. I tend my garden again. I read in the afternoons. I host small dinners with people who bring nothing but good stories and full hearts. My life is quiet, simple, but it's mine. No one manages it for me. No one makes decisions in my name. I'm not a liability. I'm not a burden. I'm just Doris Campbell. 74 years old, sharp as ever, and finally living without fear. Some people saw an old woman. But I was never fragile, I was just unfinished. I've had a lot of time to think since it all began. About Melissa, about motherhood, about the difference between being loved and being used. And here's what I've learned. Some people see the elderly as burdens. Inconveniences, things to be managed, like overgrown hedges or leaking faucets. They forget we were once the ones holding the house together. Signing report cards, working double shifts, burying our grief quietly so someone else could sleep peacefully at night. They think that age weakens us. But what it really does, is sharpen us. We see the patterns faster. We spot the lies before they form. We recognize the chill in a handshake, the emptiness behind, just checking in. I used to wonder how it would feel, being forgotten. Being replaced. Now I know. It doesn't break you. It reveals you. And if you're lucky, if you're really lucky, it also frees you. Melissa will carry what she did. Whether she admits it or not. Whether we ever fully mend or not. I don't need revenge. I don't need tears. I just needed the truth to breathe. And it has. It's alive in this house. In every creak of the stairs I still walk confidently. In the laughter from the garden when Fran brings over too much pie. In Kevin's knock every Tuesday, and the way his coffee always comes with a new story. It's in the letter I've written to Lila, tucked away in my safe, that says, "You don't have to be blood to be chosen." Because in the end, that's the real story. Not the betrayal, not the inheritance, not even the nursing home brochure. It's the fact that sometimes when the people we raised no longer see us, someone else does. Someone who remembers your birthday. Someone who shovels your walkway before you ask. Someone who makes you feel seen without ever asking for a thing in return. Family, it turns out, isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up. And I showed up for myself, too. That might be the biggest victory of all. So no, this isn't a sad story. It's a survival story. It's a quiet rebellion with a very loud heart. And if you're sitting there wondering if your voice still matters, if your life still has chapters left to write, let me be the one to tell you, it does. And you do. Because dignity doesn't age, wisdom doesn't rot, and love, the real kind, can outlive betrayal every single time. I'm not anyone's liability. I'm a legacy, and I'm just getting started.